The tea has barely stopped steaming when a familiar argument breaks out at the old pavilion. Someone insists Chu Feng has become too reckless, while someone else laughs and says the Heavenly Law Palace clearly has not learned its lesson. Either way, the road-weary daoists have returned at just the right moment, for tonight's tale promises enough thunder to make even the wine cups tremble. The Moonlight Maze left Chu Feng with grief, enemies, and a desperate resolve to protect those he loves. After silencing the Heavenly Law Palace with 2 swift strikes, he returned to Cyanwood Mountain and spent 2 months forging an unprecedented defensive spirit formation, sacrificing his own strength to shield his companion. Now the formation is complete, his allies stand ready, and the Heavenly Law Palace has marched to Cyanwood Mountain seeking vengeance. Before countless witnesses, Chu Feng is finally prepared to settle this ancient sect's challenge once and for all. Outside the Moonlight Maze, the storm had not ended. It had merely changed its shape. After hearing the weaponry refinement immortal's advice, Chu Feng finally stopped pursuing Su Ru and Su Me. Yet he said nothing. He simply stood there, silent, while emotions more violent than any killing intent churned inside his heart. Those 2 women were not strangers, nor ordinary companions. They were people Chu Feng cherished deeply. Worse still, the moon demon that had seized their bodies had entered them because of something Chu Feng himself had done. That was why Chu Feng's pain was far heavier than simple worry. In his mind, responsibility had already become guilt. Every moment Su Ru and Su Me remained under the moon demon's control felt like a consequence he had personally created. For someone whose will had endured countless life-and-death battles, this kind of self-blame was far more dangerous than an enemy standing before him.
Chu Feng, let's go.
The weaponry refinement immortal urged him once more. When Chu Feng had rushed from the Moonlight Maze, he had been too shaken to conceal himself within the vault. Now, standing openly outside the maze, both he and the weaponry refinement immortal had already been noticed by countless cultivators. Whispers spread through the crowd like wind through a forest. Some people pointed toward them. Others smiled and waved, clearly hoping to establish even the slightest connection with these 2 renowned figures. That reaction was hardly surprising. The weaponry refinement immortal stood among the great experts of the holy land of martialism, while Chu Feng's name had already shaken countless powers. One represented established prestige, the other represented terrifying potential. Yet the weaponry refinement immortal was not urging Chu Feng away, because he feared the crowd. He feared what might happen if Chu Feng remained surrounded, while his emotions were this unstable. He had never seen Chu Feng lose his inner balance so severely. Distancing him from a densely packed gathering was therefore not retreat, but precaution. But before they could depart, a furious roar suddenly exploded from within the sea of people, rolling across the surroundings like thunder.
Chu Feng, I've finally found you.
The crowd split apart. A group marched forward with imposing momentum and surrounded Chu Feng together with the weaponry refinement immortal. Their identities were unmistakable. They were from the Heavenly Law Palace. Some among them were familiar faces, cultivators who had entered the Moonlight Maze alongside Chu Feng. Others were strangers, most likely reinforcements summoned after the chaos within the maze. At their head stood an old man with a dark face and long sideburns. His appearance was fierce, his aura oppressive, and his cultivation had reached rank 6 martial emperor. He was a management elder of the Heavenly Law Palace, known as Quang Kui. Quang Kui's connection to Elder Yu Ling was no ordinary relationship. Rumor held that they had entered the Heavenly Law Palace as disciples together, and later became sworn brothers. Now Quang Kui's eyes were filled with such fury that his glare alone seemed intent on tearing Chu Feng apart. Clearly, news of Yu Ling's death had already reached him, and he had come seeking an accounting. Quang Kui's arrival could hardly have come at a worse moment. Chu Feng was already carrying guilt over Su Ru and Su Me. while the weaponry refinement immortal was equally troubled by their fate. What might normally have been a political confrontation was now taking place before two people whose patience had already been worn dangerously thin. The weaponry refinement immortal immediately sensed the hostility in Quang Kui's posture. His expression turned cold.
Quang Kui, I'd urge you not to cause trouble.
His warning carried more than words. A powerful chill spread outward with his voice, making his position unmistakable. If Quang Kui insisted on entangling them, the weaponry refinement immortal was prepared to act. He too was in no peaceful state of mind. Su Ru and Su Mei had stayed with him for a considerable period, and he had developed genuine affection for the two. Their bodies had now been seized by the moon demon. How could he possibly remain calm? Quang Kui frowned. For an instant, hesitation flashed across his face. He knew perfectly well what sort of figure stood before him. Yet retreat was equally difficult. If he backed down now, he would disgrace not only himself, but also the heavenly law palace, and punishment might await him once he returned. So Quang Kui's courage was not born from confidence that he could defeat the weaponry refinement immortal. It was born from the burden of representing a great power. This was the arrogance and weakness of enormous sects alike. Sometimes reputation forced their members forward, even when strength warned them to stop. Bracing himself, Quang Kui hardened his expression and spoke, as though the heavenly law palace itself stood behind every word.
Weaponry refinement, immortal. I respect you as an immortal. However, this matter concerns Chu Feng and our heavenly law palace. I hope you will not interfere.
Little friend Chu Feng's business is my business.
The answer was immediate, firm, and without the slightest room for negotiation.
You.
Quang Kui had clearly not expected such an uncompromising response. The weaponry refinement immortal was not merely offering polite support. He had openly declared that anyone dealing with Chu Feng would first have to deal with him. Knowing his own group could not contend with the weaponry refinement immortal directly, Quang Kui changed tactics. If strength could not pressure this immortal, perhaps the name of the heavenly law palace could.
Weaponry refinement, immortal. Chu Feng indirectly caused the death of our heavenly law palaces, Elder Zhao Yu, and also hounded Elder Yu Ling to death. Are you certain you wish to interfere in this matter?
The accusation immediately stirred the surrounding crowd. Many had not entered the Moonlight Maze, and knew nothing about what had truly happened inside. They only knew that Zhao Yu and Yu Ling were both rank 6 martial emperors. How could the deaths of two experts of that level both be connected to Chu Feng? What exactly had happened within the Moonlight Maze? Before suspicion could take root, a loud voice suddenly erupted from among the witnesses.
Heavenly Law Palace, do not lie through your teeth. Back in the Moonlight Palace, the moment little friend Chu Feng discovered danger, he wanted to lead all of us away. It was Elder Yu Ling who insisted that Chu Feng was deceiving us because he wanted the treasures of the Moonlight Palace for himself. Yu Ling was the one who demanded that everyone remain. He even swore that if he had falsely accused Chu Feng, he would publicly take his own life. Later, when the killing formation appeared inside the Moonlight Maze, it was little friend Chu Feng who saved our lives. Elder Yu Ling could not abandon the oath he had made, so he committed suicide.
The truth continued to pour forth before the entire gathering.
As for Zhao Yu, greed for the Moonlight Maze immortality peaches overwhelmed him. He poisoned little friend Chu Feng and rendered him unconscious. Had we not arrived when we did, Chu Feng might have been the one to suffer a disaster. Zhao Yu eventually died from poison after eating more than 1,000 immortality peaches by himself. His death had nothing to do with anyone else. Your heavenly law palace constantly claims to be righteous and to uphold heavenly law. Yet inside the Moonlight Maze, you performed no righteous deeds whatsoever. Instead, your people committed malicious acts and nearly dragged everyone there to their deaths. And now you want to frame the very person who saved us. How much more shameless can your heavenly law palace become?
All eyes turned toward the speaker. It was not a human cultivator, but a lizard-like monstrous beast. His cultivation had only reached peak half-martial emperor, far beneath Quang Kui's rank 6 martial emperor realm. Yet despite that enormous disparity, he had dared to stand before a management elder of the Heavenly Law Palace and publicly expose what had happened. The significance of this moment went beyond cultivation. The lizard monstrous beast possessed nowhere near enough strength to confront Quang Kui, but he possessed something Quang Kui could not erase so easily: first-hand testimony. Against an organization trying to control the story through status, a witness willing to speak became a weapon of his own. Quang Kui's sword-like brows tightened. His anger surged.
You dare frame our heavenly law palace, lizard monstrous race? Are you trying to oppose our heavenly law palace?
The moment his words fell, the atmosphere changed. The heavens themselves seemed to darken beneath the pressure of Quang Kui's rank 6 martial emperor aura. Cold oppressive might swept across the area. Cultivators below rank 6 martial emperor trembled beneath it, and the lizard monstrous beast was forced backward again and again. Quang Kui's intention had become obvious. If facts could not be defeated with facts, then he would suppress those facts with power. He would use the prestige and strength of the Heavenly Law Palace to reverse black and white before everyone's eyes. The lizard monstrous beast hesitated. He might have been willing to risk his own life, but he did not stand alone in this world. Behind him was the entire lizard monstrous race. Defying the Heavenly Law Palace openly could bring consequences upon all of them. This was precisely why the Heavenly Law Palace's threat was so effective. Great powers rarely needed to kill every dissenter personally. The possibility of retaliation against families, races, sects, and companions was often enough to silence weaker cultivators. Quang Kui was not merely threatening one beast. He was threatening everything that beast represented. But just as that pressure threatened to silence the witness, another voice rang out from the crowd. A thick-browed, large-eyed burly man stepped forward. Facts speak louder than words. What happened in the Moonlight Maze was witnessed and experienced by countless people. It is not something your Heavenly Law Palace can change by force. His voice grew stronger as he addressed the countless survivors around him. Brothers who were saved by little friend Chu Feng in the Moonlight Maze. Every one of us owes him a life. Little friend Chu Feng already said that he did not require repayment from us. Yet now the Heavenly Law Palace is trying to reverse right and wrong and falsely accuse the man who saved us. At a time like this, shouldn't we at least speak for him? If we are too frightened even to speak for our benefactor, then what moral integrity do we have left if that is the kind of people we are? It would have been better for us to die inside the Moonlight Maze. This man too had been saved by Chu Feng. Earlier inside the Moonlight Maze, he had even questioned Chu Feng's intention. Yet Chu Feng had neither resented him nor abandoned him. When disaster struck, Chu Feng still saved everyone. Later, when Chu Feng called upon the survivors to help battle the dark hole, the burly man had been too weak to join them. That inability had remained inside him like a stone of guilt. Now, however, strength was no longer the requirement. Chu Feng did not need him to fight the dark hole. He only needed people who knew the truth to refuse silence. For the burly man, this was a chance to repay a debt that could not be measured in treasures. He had once doubted Chu Feng, and later lacked the power to stand beside him in battle. But now, when reputation itself had become the battlefield, even an ordinary survivor could finally fight for him. And this was where the confrontation began to turn. Quang Kui possessed rank 6 martial emperor cultivation, and the Heavenly Law Palace behind him. But Chu Feng possessed something harder to crush than one opponent, the shared memory of everyone whose life he had saved. When enough witnesses refuse to bow, even a great power can no longer decide the truth, by simply speaking the loudest.
That's right. Facts speak louder than words. Every one of us saw what happened inside the Moonlight Maze with our own eyes.
From beginning to end, it was your heavenly law palace that stood in the wrong. Yet instead of apologizing to little friend Chu Feng, you twist truth into falsehood and try to frame him. Heavenly law palace. You are utterly shameless! Exclamation. What right do you have to call yourselves a righteous sect that upholds the heavenly law?
The heavenly law palace is despicable and shameless! Exclamation. You are unworthy of the righteous path! Exclamation. Get out of our holy land of martialism.
One voice became 10. 10 became 100. In the blink of an eye, cultivators throughout the surrounding space rose to defend Chu Feng, their condemnation rolling toward the heavenly law palace like an unstoppable tide. Those who had never entered the Moonlight Maze were stunned speechless. They had expected fear when the name Heavenly Law Palace was spoken. Instead, they witnessed strangers willingly standing beside Chu Feng and openly insulting one of the greatest human powers in the holy land of martialism. That was what made the scene so extraordinary. These people possessed no blood relation to Chu Feng, owed him no loyalty, and stood to gain nothing from defending him. By speaking now, they were knowingly risking the hostility of the heavenly law palace. Their courage was not born from allegiance. It was born from what they had personally witnessed inside the Moonlight Maze. Elder Quang Kui stared at the surging crowd. His face flushed crimson, his teeth ground together, and even his body trembled beneath the weight of his fury.
You, all of you.
To Quang Kui, the weaponry refinement immortal opposing the heavenly law palace was already difficult enough to endure. But now, cultivators he regarded as insignificant dared to challenge the palace as well. Before countless witnesses, the prestige of the heavenly law palace was being trampled beneath their feet. For a power whose authority depended heavily on reputation and fear, this humiliation struck deeper than ordinary insults. Quang Kui was no longer thinking merely about silencing criticism. He wanted to restore dominance through blood.
All of you are truly courting death.
With a furious roar, Quang Kui thrust his right hand toward the heavens and opened his palm. A violent gale erupted around him. His rank 6 martial emperor oppressive might surged outward, twisting the surrounding energy into an enormous vortex that swallowed the region. Killing intent descended upon those who had cursed the heavenly law palace. This was no empty threat. Quang Kui intended to massacre them in public, to make their deaths an example for everyone who might ever dare defy his sect. Then lightning seemed to tear across the sky. A figure flashed through space so quickly that he resembled a phantom. Before Quang Kui's oppressive might could descend upon the crowd, Chu Feng was already standing beside him. There was no warning, no argument, no hesitation, only a cold, murderous gaze, and the furious coiling dragon, beheader rising in Chu Feng's hand. The blade descended. A sharp crack split the air, blood erupted, and Elder Quang Kui's body was severed into 2 pieces. Silence. The entire region fell deathly still. Even the weaponry refinement immortal froze in astonishment. Those who had never witnessed Chu Feng's true strength could barely comprehend what their eyes had just seen. Chu Feng was a member of the younger generation. Quang Kui was a renowned management elder of the Heavenly Law Palace, a rank 6 martial emperor. Yet that celebrated expert had been killed by Chu Feng with one strike. The shocking point was not merely that Chu Feng could defeat Quang Kui. It was the overwhelming gap revealed by the strike. There had been no prolonged exchange, no desperate battle, and no opportunity for Quang Kui to recover. Against Chu Feng's current combat power and the furious coiling dragon beheader, a rank 6 martial emperor had been erased almost instantly. Even more frightening was Chu Feng's decision itself. Before countless witnesses, he had openly killed a management elder, belonging to one of humanity's 3 greatest powers. That single slash did more than take a life. It announced that the name Heavenly Law Palace no longer possessed enough weight to make Chu Feng lower his blade. At last, another elder of the Heavenly Law Palace recovered from his shock. Surrounded by so many witnesses, and relying upon the prestige of his sect, he forced courage into his voice, and pointed accusingly at Chu Feng.
Chu Feng, you are truly bold! You actually dared to kill a management elder of our Heavenly Law Palace! You.
He never finished. The furious coiling dragon beheader moved again. A silver arc tore across the sky, and even the void trembled beneath its power. The second elder was cut apart, exactly like Quang Q. Dead. Chu Feng stood with the weapon in his hand, his expression colder than winter steel. When he finally spoke, his voice carried almost no emotion, only killing intent.
Those who wish to die may continue speaking.
That sentence extinguished every remaining protest. The Heavenly Law Palace experts immediately closed their mouths. Their earlier arrogance vanished, replaced by panic. Some lowered their heads. Others avoided Chu Feng's gaze entirely. The very people who had come intending to suppress Chu Feng now stood terrified of provoking him with so much as another word. Nor were they alone. The surrounding observers had heard stories of Chu Feng's fame and strength, but rumor was one thing. Watching him casually kill 2 Heavenly Law Palace elders was another. Stories could be exaggerated. Reputation could be manufactured. But the severed bodies before them were real. The power behind those 2 strikes was real, and the killing intent pressing against their hearts was unquestionably real. In that moment, the crowd finally understood why Chu Feng's enemies feared him. Chu Feng swept his gaze across those present. Then his voice exploded across heaven and earth, like divine thunder.
All of you, listen carefully. Whether you are from the Heavenly Law Palace or the Dark Hall, if you wish to make me, Chu Feng, your enemy, then come and find me. I, Chu Feng, have never been one to fear you. Send 1 person, and I will kill 1. Send 2, and I will kill 2. However many you send after me, that is how many I will kill.
His declaration shook the void. Space trembled beneath the force of his voice, as though even the firmament itself recoiled from the killing intent contained within those words. Even those who had defended Chu Feng moments earlier felt coldness creep through their hearts. They had stood beside him because they believed him to be right. Now they were being reminded that righteousness did not make him gentle toward enemies. This was the line Chu Feng drew before the entire holy land of martialism. He would not actively bow before great powers simply because their foundations were ancient, and once they came seeking his life, he would answer with death. From this moment onward, anyone choosing to pursue him could no longer pretend they had not been warned. And perhaps that was the most dangerous change of all. Chu Feng was no longer merely a talented junior, struggling beneath the shadow of enormous sects. He was rapidly becoming someone those enormous sects would have to calculate around. Having said everything he intended to say, Chu Feng turned and left without another glance. He had no desire to waste another breath arguing with the crowd. Before following him, the weaponry refinement immortal fixed the Heavenly Law Palace experts with a grave stare.
Heavenly Law Palace, I advise you to understand the situation. Chu Feng may belong to the younger generation, but he is not someone you can bully. Do not make Chu Feng your enemy. Otherwise, one day, you will regret it.
His warning was not empty intimidation. Chu Feng had already dared to become the enemy of the Dark Hall, and behind him stood an alliance with the ancient era's elves. The Heavenly Law Palace was indeed one of the 3 strongest human powers in the holy land of martialism. Yet compared with the ancient era's elves, its strength remained distinctly inferior. From the weaponry refinement immortal's perspective, continuing this feud offered the Heavenly Law Palace almost no meaningful benefit. Chu Feng's personal strength was rising rapidly. His alliances had grown terrifyingly powerful, and the Dark Hall was already a far greater threat. Choosing this moment to make Chu Feng a mortal enemy would be less an act of pride than an invitation to disaster. Yet the weaponry refinement immortal's warning also carried a trace of restraint. The Heavenly Law Palace had survived for countless years, and was one of the oldest powers in the holy land of martialism. As a fellow inhabitant of this land, he did not wish to see such an ancient institution distraught. But compassion had limits. If the Heavenly Law Palace ignored his warning and continued trying to kill Chu Feng, then the weaponry refinement immortal would not spare them either. The weaponry refinement immortal soon caught up with Chu Feng. Away from the confrontation, the murderous pressure surrounding the young man had gradually receded.
Chu Feng, have you managed to calm yourself?
I am fine. I am only afraid something may happen to Lil Ru and Lil Mei.
Chu Feng had indeed regained his composure, but the anxiety in his heart had not faded. His concern for Su Ru and Su Mei remained as heavy as before, and the guilt he carried toward them had only deepened. The contrast was striking. Moments earlier, Chu Feng could kill powerful enemies without hesitation. Yet when the danger involved people he cared about, raw strength could not grant him peace. His greatest pressure was not fear for himself. It was the possibility that others might pay the price for standing close to him. The weaponry refinement immortal released a long sigh. He understood Chu Feng well enough to know that empty consolation would accomplish nothing. Chu Feng was intelligent, rational when necessary, and already understood his situation.
What do you plan to do now?
Return to the Cyanwood Mountain.
The weaponry refinement immortal's expression immediately changed.
Return to the Cyanwood Mountain, Chu Feng. That is the one place you should avoid most right now.
Chu Feng's answer was calm. He understood the danger even better than anyone trying to warn him.
We have now become absolute enemies with the Dark Hall, and the World Devastator immortal escape. Once the Dark Hall's Hall Master learns that I was the one who ruined his plan, he will certainly not let me go. If they want to find me, they will definitely go to the Cyanwood Mountain.
Since you already understand that, why would you still return there?
Chu Feng did not hesitate.
Then what should I do? Go to the Elf Kingdom and hide beneath their protection while leaving every one of my friends in the Cyanwood Mountain exposed to the Dark Hall, waiting for them to be slaughtered.
This was the heart of Chu Feng's decision. Retreating to the Elf Kingdom might have been strategically safer for him personally, but it would also leave the Cyanwood Mountain as the most obvious target through which his enemies could strike at him. To Chu Feng, survival purchased with the lives of his companions was not genuine survival at all.
Chu Feng, that is not what I mean. But sometimes one must consider the greater good. The greater a person's ability, the greater his responsibility. And you...
Chu Feng interrupted with a question more difficult to answer than any argument.
Senior Weaponry Refinement Immortal, if your own kinsmen were in danger, would you ignore them?
For once, the weaponry refinement immortal hesitated.
I know Senior would not abandon them. Chu Feng, am the same. I will not abandon them either.
The weaponry refinement immortal could say nothing more. He knew Chu Feng's temperament. At ordinary times, Chu Feng could calculate benefits, enemies, and danger with remarkable clarity. But at the decisive moment, loyalty and righteousness weighed more heavily in his heart than personal safety. And that was precisely the contradiction that made Chu Feng both dangerous and admirable. His loyalty could lead him directly toward overwhelming danger, but it was also the very reason powerful figures, such as the weaponry refinement immortal, were willing to trust him. A man who would not abandon his companions when death approached was also a man whose friendship carried extraordinary weight. The road back to Cyanwood Mountain was therefore more than a return home. With the Dark Hall now an absolute enemy, and the world devastator immortal still alive, Chu Feng was willingly walking toward the place. His enemies were most likely to strike. Whatever awaited him there, avoidance was no longer part of his answer. The weaponry refinement immortal finally sighed and accepted the decision.
Very well.
He had admired Chu Feng from the beginning precisely because of this loyalty and sense of righteousness. If Chu Feng refused to abandon the people of Cyanwood Mountain, then the weaponry refinement immortal would not abandon Chu Feng.
Since you insist on returning, I will accompany you to the Cyanwood Mountain.
When Chu Feng and the weaponry refinement immortal finally departed, the struggle within the Moonlight Maze came to a complete end. The ancient labyrinth fell silent once more, but the shockwaves born inside it were only beginning to sweep across the holy land of martialism. Most cultivators who had ventured into the Moonlight Maze returned with empty hands. Yet there were also fortunate survivors who carried treasures out of that mysterious land, treasures so rare and precious that even a single one could stir greed among great powers and ignite bloodshed between factions. And still, those priceless treasures were not what truly shook the world. Far more terrifying were the events that had taken place beneath the Moonlight Maze's ancient shadows. The first great revelation concerned the battle between the Dark Hall and the ancient era's elves. The experts who had personally taken part had already scattered, but secrets involving so many powerful figures could never remain buried forever. Word escaped, passed from mouth to mouth, and soon spread through the holy land of martialism, like wildfire carried by a violent wind. The people learned that the mysterious Dark Hall possessed strength sufficient to contend with the ancient era's elves. Worse still, the map of the Moonlight Maze had been deliberately spread by the Dark Hall. Their purpose had never been to share opportunity. They had lured cultivators into the maze, intending to sacrifice those lives and summon the terrifying moon demon. That revelation changed the meaning of the Dark Hall's existence completely. A hidden faction possessing great strength was already dangerous, but a faction willing to sacrifice countless unrelated cultivators for its objective was something far worse. It meant the Dark Hall did not merely seek influence. It was prepared to treat the entire holy land of martialism as a chessboard, and its inhabitants as expendable pieces. Fear spread rapidly. The Dark Hall had openly proclaimed that one day it would rule the holy land of martialism. Until then, many might have regarded those words as arrogance. But after the Moonlight Maze, that declaration suddenly carried the weight of genuine menace. The second great event centered upon Chu Feng and the Heavenly Law Palace. Within the Moonlight Maze, Elder Yu Ling and Elder Zhao Yu had indeed acted wrongly toward Chu Feng. Yet when Elder Quang Kui later questioned him, Chu Feng had not wasted words. He killed the elder directly. To countless observers, that act was nothing less than open contempt for the Heavenly Law Palace. Rumors claimed that Chu Feng had the ancient era's elves standing behind him. Yet among the human powers of the holy land of martialism, many did not consider the Heavenly Law Palace inferior to even the ancient era's elves. Thus, an ominous conclusion began forming in countless minds. Chu Feng had provoked a catastrophe. With the Heavenly Law Palace's temperament and status, swallowing the death of one of its elders without retaliation would amount to admitting weakness. Chu Feng's single decisive strike therefore carried consequences far beyond one man's death. It challenged the dignity of an entire hegemonic power. While these two storms spread throughout the holy land of martialism, Chu Feng and the weaponry refinement immortal had already returned to Cyanwood Mountain. Chu Feng did not rest. He did not celebrate surviving the Moonlight Maze, nor did he concern himself with the rumors outside. The moment he returned, he entered closed-door training. His objective was astonishing. Using his world spirit techniques, Chu Feng intended to comprehend and construct a colossal defensive spirit formation, one powerful enough that even peak martial emperors would be unable to break through it. The formation was profoundly complicated. Even with Chu Feng's accomplishments as a world spiritist, successfully arranging it would be extraordinarily difficult, yet he refused to abandon the attempt. The reason was Cyanwood Mountain itself. Things were no longer as they had once been. After the Moonlight Maze incident, even Zhang Tianyi and his father, Zhang Ming, had arrived there. Nearly everyone connected to Chu Feng was now gathered upon this mountain, and the war against the Dark Hall had already begun. For Chu Feng, the formation was no longer merely a demonstration of world spirit mastery. It was a shield for everyone he cared about. The greater the number of people gathered at Cyanwood Mountain, the more dangerous the mountain became as a single target. Protecting one person might require strength. Protecting an entire mountain required preparation on another scale entirely. Thus Chu Feng poured everything he had into his closed-door training. Outside the sealed location, the weaponry refinement immortal, Bailey Xuankong, Nangong Longjian, Zhang Tianyi, Zhang Ming, Bai Ruochen, Jiang Wusheng, and the others remained nearby, closely guarding the entrance. Their vigilance was not directed only toward possible enemies. They were worried about Chu Feng himself. Ever since his return, something about him had changed. His demeanor had become heavier, more withdrawn, almost as though an invisible burden pressed continually upon his heart. Everyone understood the reason. Suru and Sumei. The danger surrounding those important to him had transformed Chu Feng's urgency into obsession. His closed-door training was therefore both cultivation and emotional struggle. Every failure in the formation would remind him that strength alone could not guarantee the safety of those he wished to protect. While the group remained outside, another powerful figure approached. He was an elderly man whose cultivation stood on the same mighty level as the weaponry refinement immortal, and whose reputation across the holy land of martialism was equally prestigious. He was the immeasurable immortal.
His little friend, Chu Feng, still not emerged from his closed-door training.
Before long, a snow-haired woman voiced the concern that had been lingering in several hearts. She too was a Dragon Mark Royal Cloak world spiritist of the holy land of martialism, the snow-haired immortal, who had once wished to accept Chu Feng as her disciple.
Why is that boy Chu Feng so stubborn? Protecting one person would already be difficult enough, yet he wishes to protect the entire Cyanwood Mountain. This mountain is enormous, and he actually wants to create a spirit formation capable of resisting peak martial emperors. Isn't that simply indulging in fantasy? If he continues forcing himself like this, there is a chance he may lose control and suffer cultivation deviation.
The snow-haired immortal and the immeasurable immortal both maintained good relations with the ancient era's elves. Upon learning of the battle against the Dark Hole, they had immediately traveled toward the Elf Kingdom, intending to offer assistance. Yet the Elf King had instead asked them to come to Cyanwood Mountain. With them came important news from the wider battlefield. The Dark Hall had suffered severe losses inside the Moonlight Maze. In response, its forces attacking the ancient era's elves' strategic positions had withdrawn. But the ancient era's elves did not mistake retreat for defeat. Instead of relaxing their vigilance, they reinforced every strategic location under their control, preparing themselves for the Dark Hall's next assault. That decision revealed how seriously the Elf Kingdom regarded the enemy. A force that suffers heavy casualties, yet remains capable of threatening multiple strategic positions, cannot be judged by a single setback. The Dark Hole had lost a battle, but the war itself was far from decided. The ancient era's elves were also concerned about Cyanwood Mountain. Therefore, they had not merely sent the immeasurable immortal and snow-haired immortal there. A considerable number of their own forces had also been dispatched to reinforce the mountain. Hearing the snow-haired immortal's doubts regarding Chu Feng, the weaponry refinement immortal spoke.
Snow-hair, you cannot put it that way. Little friend, Chu Feng's world spirit techniques have already surpassed ours. In the entire holy land of martialism, I fear only the heaven-reaching immortal possesses world spirit techniques comparable to his.
Those were not empty words. The weaponry refinement immortal had personally witnessed Chu Feng comprehend the spirit formation, capable of sealing the moon demon in an instant. That sight had left him with a profound understanding of just how terrifying Chu Feng's attainments in world spirit techniques had become. The immeasurable immortal nodded in agreement.
Little friend, Chu Feng's talent is truly extraordinary. World spirit techniques are themselves among the strongest defensive methods beneath the heavens. There are even legends claiming that world spiritists are, in truth, capable of becoming the strongest experts in the world. The problem is that no one can rely entirely upon world spirit techniques. That is why the people of the holy land of martialism choose martial cultivation without hesitation, rather than devoting themselves solely to the world spiritist path. Even so, little friend Chu Feng's accomplishments in world spirit techniques have already risen far beyond ours.
This was precisely what made Chu Feng unusual. Martial cultivation gave him overwhelming combat strength, while world spirit techniques gave him access to barriers, formations, sealing methods and powers that ordinary martial experts could never reproduce. His danger did not come from one path alone, but from how many paths he could advance simultaneously. The snow-haired immortal, however, remained unconvinced.
Isn't that evaluation somewhat too high?
She admired Chu Feng greatly, but saying that only the heaven-reaching immortal could rival him in world spirit techniques was still difficult for her to accept. After all, she knew perfectly well why the world devastator immortal ranked second among the 10 immortals. His reputation did not rest solely upon martial cultivation. His world spirit techniques were exceptionally formidable as well. If the weaponry refinement immortal's judgment was correct, then Chu Feng's world spirit techniques had already surpassed even those of the world devastator immortal. Such a conclusion was difficult to believe. The weaponry refinement immortal answered without hesitation.
Snow-hair, do not forget that little friend Chu Feng is an Asura world spiritist. Even if we ignore everything else, merely being capable of making Asura world spirits serve him is already something others cannot compare with.
At those words, Nangong Longian spoke. His testimony carried a different weight, because he had personally witnessed the terror associated with Chu Feng's Asura world spirits.
Indeed, the Chu Feng of the past cannot be compared with the Chu Feng standing at his current level. Back then, Chu Feng was merely a rank 1/2 martial emperor. Yet within the Nangong imperial clan, he released an Asura evil spirit whose cultivation had reached rank 1 martial emperor. That Asura evil spirit was only a rank 1 martial emperor. Yet it nearly razed our Nangong imperial clan to the ground. I eventually managed to force it back, but even I was injured during the confrontation.
The atmosphere around the closed-door training grounds seemed to grow heavier.
More importantly, I do not believe that Asura evil spirit displayed its complete strength. Had it truly unleashed everything it possessed, even I might not have been its match. And that is the potential little friend Chu Feng possesses.
The snow-haired immortal fell silent. Chu Feng's past achievement were simply too extraordinary to dismiss. And after hearing Nangong Longjian's account, it was not only the snow-haired immortal who was astonished. Several of the great figures present involuntarily drew in cold breaths. Very few people knew the true details of what had occurred inside the Nangong imperial clan when that Asura evil spirit appeared. For many standing there, this was the first time they had heard the complete weight of that incident. Until now, most of them had focused upon Chu Feng's martial achievements, his heaven-defying battle power, and his tremendously powerful inherited bloodline. Those qualities were already dazzling enough to overshadow nearly everything else. But now they were forced to reconsider everything they knew about him. Chu Feng's martial power might be what enemies noticed first, but his world spirit techniques could be the more frightening weapon. Martial strength allowed him to defeat powerful opponents himself. World spirit techniques, however, could summon terrifying world spirits, seal monsters like the moon demon, create defenses for entire stronghold, and reshape the conditions of a battlefield before combat even began. And that made the closed door before them far more significant than it appeared. If Chu Feng truly succeeded in constructing a formation capable of resisting peak martial emperors, Cyanwood Mountain would gain more than a protective barrier. It would gain proof that Chu Feng's world spiritist path had entered a realm even the greatest experts of the holy land of martialism could no longer casually measure. The world outside was already preparing for the Dark Hall's next move, while the heavenly law palaces' wrath still loomed over Chu Feng. Yet behind one sealed gate on Cyanwood Mountain, another force was quietly taking shape, and whether Chu Feng could complete that formation might determine how many people survived the storm still to come. For Chu Feng, this closed-door training was unlike any before it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. 2 full months passed beneath the silent shadow of the Cyanwood Mountain, yet the sealed gates remained shut. Not once did Chu Feng emerge. Outside those gates, however, the number of people waiting only continued to grow. Some had even abandoned their own duties, simply to remain there, watching the entrance and waiting for the slightest movement from within. Everyone knew that Chu Feng possessed talent far beyond ordinary geniuses. Yet this time, talent alone could not erase their unease. His objective was simply too terrifyingly difficult. He was attempting to create a grand spirit formation, capable of resisting even peak martial emperors. Throughout the entire holy land of martialism, this was something that ordinary world spiritists would scarcely dare to imagine, much less attempt. The difficulty did not lie merely in pouring more spirit power into a formation. To resist experts standing at the summit of the martial emperor realm, every layer, every connection, and every transformation of world spirit power had to withstand overwhelming force without collapsing. Chu Feng was not simply constructing a barrier. He was trying to push the limits of the world spirit techniques known within the holy land of martialism. No one outside wished to see him fail. What they feared was something far worse, that Chu Feng would force himself beyond his limits, damaging himself while pursuing an achievement that should have been impossible. Then, on the third day after 2 complete months had passed, a deep rumbling suddenly rolled through the sealed chamber. Rumble! Rumble! Every gaze snapped toward the entrance. The tightly sealed gates, motionless for more than 60 days, finally began to open.
Chu Feng.
The waiting experts surged forward almost at once. Relief flashed across their faces, but the moment they truly saw Chu Feng, that relief turned into alarm.
Chu Feng, are you all right?
His face was deathly pale. The vigorous young man who had entered the chamber 2 months earlier had become frighteningly thin, as though every trace of strength had been drained from his body. He seemed nearly reduced to skin and bone, his appearance altered by sheer exhaustion. Yet while everyone stared at him in horror, Chu Feng smiled.
Seniors, I succeeded.
Those few weak words carried the weight of more than 2 months of relentless effort. Then Chu Feng's eyes closed. His body swayed, strength vanished from his legs, and he collapsed before them.
Chu Feng.
The weaponry refinement immortal, and the otherworld spiritists reacted instantly, catching him before he struck the ground. Spirit power swept across Chu Feng's body as they hurriedly examined his condition. Rare medicines, precious herbs, and treasures capable of treating severe injuries were immediately brought out without hesitation. At that moment, no one cared about their value. If sacrificing their own cultivation could have saved Chu Feng, these experts would have done so without the slightest reluctance. That reaction revealed Chu Feng's true importance to them. He was no longer merely a gifted junior. He had become a pillar upon which the safety and future of countless people depended. What he had risked inside that chamber had been done for those now desperately trying to save him. Unable to endure the uncertainty any longer, Nangong Longjian and the others pressed the world spiritists for an answer.
Exactly what is happening to Chu Feng?
There is no fatal danger.
The weaponry refinement immortal frowned. A trace of pain appeared across his aged face.
However
what?
The single unfinished word tightened every heart. They could accept exhaustion. They could accept injury. What they feared was damage that even these powerful world spiritists could not reverse.
Chu Feng's body is far too weak. It is as though he completely exhausted himself. Even his core has been injured. I fear he will not recover within a short period of time.
How could Chu Feng have ended up like this?
Zhang Ming studied Chu Feng's condition carefully. Although he was not counted among the 10 immortals, he was still a Dragon Mark Royal Cloak world spiritist, with profound accomplishments in world spirit techniques.
Most likely, while researching that spirit formation, Chu Feng ignored the condition of his own body. He continuously overburdened himself, using his spirit energy to communicate with world spirit power far beyond what his body could comfortably endure. This child truly disregarded the consequences.
Chu Feng's collapse was therefore not the result of a single accident. It was accumulated exhaustion, the price of maintaining extreme concentration and repeatedly controlling world spirit power, until his physical foundation itself could no longer endure the strain. His success had been purchased by pushing his body to the brink. Bailey Xuankong and the others from the Cyanwood Mountain lowered their heads. Jiang Wusheng and Zhang Tianyi did the same. They understood better than anyone why Chu Feng had gone so far. He had not endured those 2 months for fame, nor merely to prove the extent of his talent. He had done it to protect them, to create a refuge strong enough to shield the elders and disciples of the Cyanwood Mountain, as well as the brothers who had shared countless dangers beside him. At that time, several of the strongest Dragon Mark Royal Cloak world spiritists in the holy land of martialism were gathered within the Cyanwood Mountain. Their healing techniques were extraordinary, yet after examining Chu Feng together, they reached almost the same conclusion. Chu Feng would likely require at least 1 month merely to regain consciousness, and perhaps half a year before completely recovering. Worse still, if his injuries developed badly, the damage might even affect his future cultivation and accomplishments. For a cultivator of Chu Feng's potential, that possibility was more frightening than an ordinary wound. A damaged foundation could influence both martial cultivation and world spirit techniques, turning one desperate act of protection into a permanent price paid across his entire future. But once again, Chu Feng shattered the expectations of everyone around him. Not 1 month, not even 1 week. Merely 2 days later, Chu Feng opened his eyes. Although weakness still remained in his body, his condition had improved far beyond anything the world spiritists had predicted. Most astonishing of all, the injury to his core had completely healed. There would be no lasting damage to either his martial cultivation or his world spirit techniques. Judging from his recovery, he would not need half a year at all. With the medicines prepared by the experts around him, several more days should be enough for him to recover fully. Once again, Chu Feng displayed a resilience that defied conventional judgment. The same body that had been pushed into complete exhaustion was already restoring itself at an astonishing rate. For those accustomed to measuring geniuses by ordinary standards, Chu Feng continued to make those standards seem increasingly meaningless. Yet recovery was not what excited Chu Feng most. The moment he awakened, the fire in his eyes had already returned.
Singers, I've succeeded. I've truly succeeded. As long as all of you are willing to help me, I can definitely establish a grand spirit formation capable of protecting everyone in the Cyanwood Mountain. The formation will be large enough to accommodate every single person here.
The weaponry refinement immortal, and the others stared at him in disbelief. They had trusted Chu Feng's talent from the beginning, but trust and reality were two different things.
Chu Feng, you really succeeded.
Creating a grand formation capable of resisting peak martial emperors was already inconceivable. Creating one after only 2 months of research seemed almost absurd.
Singers, please look.
Chu Feng wasted no time trying to persuade them with words. Despite his weakened condition, he rose from the bed and walked directly into the palace hall. The vast hall was already crowded. Friends, acquaintances, elders, and experts who had rushed there after hearing about his condition were all gathered together.
Chu Feng.
But Chu Feng did not stop to exchange greetings. He rolled up his sleeves, raised his hand, and began. His finger became the brush. His royal-level world spirit power became the ink. Golden spirit power poured outward in dazzling streams. Lines, symbols, nodes, and intricate patterns spread through the enormous palace hall, until the entire space seemed transformed into a radiant golden starry sky. The world spiritists stared without blinking. Even those who barely understood world spirit techniques found themselves captivated by what was unfolding before them. They might not have understood every profound transformation hidden within the formation diagram, but its extraordinary nature was visible even to inexperienced eyes. What made Chu Feng's achievement exceptional was not merely the complexity of the formation. He had also reorganized that complexity into a form the other world spiritists could follow. Creating something profound was one achievement. Expressing it so clearly that others could assist in constructing it was another entirely. Without that second step, his grand formation would have remained nothing more than an idea only he could use. The snow-haired immortal's expression changed completely as she studied the golden diagram stretching through the hall.
Amazing. Truly amazing. Chu Feng really succeeded. If I had not personally witnessed him outlining this formation, I would never have believed that world spirit power could be used in such a manner. I have never imagined a method of establishing a spirit formation like this before.
Of everyone present, she had once been among those who doubted Chu Feng the most. Yet now she was perhaps the one most deeply shaken by his accomplishment. The snow-haired immortal, normally cold and ruthless toward others, now had tears of excitement gathering in her eyes. To her, the formation diagram before her was more than a technical achievement. It resembled something she might once have desired only in dreams, knowledge and insight, so profound that she had never expected to witness it with her own eyes. Chu Feng was merely outlining the formation, yet to an accomplished world spiritist like the snow-haired immortal. Every movement of golden spirit power resembled a masterpiece she herself could never have created. Perhaps this was the clearest proof of how far Chu Feng had advanced. Praise from ordinary observers could be dismissed as admiration for spectacle. But when Dragon Mark Royal Cloak World Spiritist experts, who understood exactly how impossible the task should have been, were moved to tears and openly admitted their inferiority, the meaning was entirely different. The weaponry refinement immortal continued studying the diagram, his astonishment growing rather than fading.
The complexity of this spirit formation far surpasses anything I imagined. For you to create something like this is already unbelievable. Yet you have actually presented something so complicated in such a concise manner that we can understand it merely by observing. Chu Feng, you truly are a genius who has surpassed even my imagination. Little friend Chu Feng, you have truly made this old man ashamed of his inferiority.
The praise was not exaggerated. Chu Feng had accomplished two things the gathered experts themselves could not. He had researched an apparently impossible grand formation, then produced a formation diagram of such clarity that they could actually comprehend and help establish it.
Indeed, I, too, must admit that I am inferior.
The same is true for me.
Admiration filled the palace hall. The impossible formation was no longer merely Chu Feng's promise spoken from a sect. Its blueprint now blazed before everyone's eyes in golden world spirit power. And this was the true turning point. Chu Feng had already paid the price of discovering the path. From this moment onward, the question was no longer whether such a protective formation could exist, but whether the gathered world spiritists could transform his extraordinary design into a fortress capable of sheltering the entire Cyanwood Mountain from even the strongest enemies. The entire palace hall seemed to hold its breath. Bailey Chuankong stared at the gathered Dragon Mark Royal Cloak World Spiritists, excitement burning behind the dignity of an old expert. If what he had just heard was true, then the fate of Cyanwood Mountain had changed in a single day.
Then Chu Feng truly succeeded, can now establish a spirit formation that even peak martial emperors cannot break.
Silence answered him first. No one moved. No one spoke. The great hall became so still that the pounding of anxious hearts seemed louder than breathing itself.
Yes, we can accomplish that now.
The weaponry refinement immortal and the other Dragon Mark Royal Cloak World Spiritists nodded together. In that instant, the silence shattered. Cheers exploded through the palace like thunder rolling beneath a mountain range. Faces flushed with emotion. Fists rose into the air. Some experts who had survived countless dangers could not stop tears from gathering in their eyes. They were not celebrating an ordinary spirit formation. They were celebrating the disappearance of a shadow that had been hanging over every life on Cyanwood Mountain. After witnessing the terror of the Dark Hall, they had understood that ordinary defenses meant almost nothing before such an enemy. Chu Feng's formation had transformed helplessness into a genuine chance of survival. Before this day, many among them had believed that if the Dark Hall truly descended upon Cyanwood Mountain, tragedy would be unavoidable. Now, with a formation capable of resisting even peak martial emperors, that certainty of death had finally been broken. Zhang Tianyi and Jiang Wushang were even less restrained than the older generation. Laughing with pride, they rushed to Chu Feng, seized their brother, and lifted him high above their heads. For them, Chu Feng's achievement was not merely the triumph of a genius. It was the triumph of a brother who had walked beside them through danger and hardship. The stronger Chu Feng became, the more intensely they felt that pride as their own. A furious voice suddenly cut through the celebration.
What are you two doing? Chu Feng is still weak! Exclamation. Put him down immediately.
The snow-haired immortal did not wait for obedience. She strode forward and practically snatched Chu Feng from Xianxia and Xianxia herself. Even after Chu Feng was safely away from them, her crimson eyes remained fixed on the two young men with such ferocity that the joy on their faces instantly froze.
Have you both lost your minds? Only just woke up. If you make him collapse again, I will kill the two of you myself.
Xianxia and Xianxia stiffened. Neither knew whether she was exaggerating, and judging from that murderous stare, neither wished to test it. Nearby, the weaponry refinement immortal and several others quietly suppressed their laughter. During Chu Feng's closed-door training, the snow-haired immortal had been among those who doubted him most openly. Yet after witnessing the terrible state of his body, she had become more anxious over his condition than almost anyone. The contradiction was almost amusing. The snow-haired immortal was famous for being ruthless, cold, and merciless. She was hardly a naturally gentle person. Yet Chu Feng had somehow become one of the rare exceptions capable of drawing genuine concern from beneath that hardened exterior. Chu Feng could only give an awkward smile beneath that unexpected protection.
Senior Snowhair, I'm all right.
Are you truly all right?
Truly.
To prove it, Chu Feng took out a healing medicinal herb and swallowed it. Then his thoughts shifted, and the power of his supreme secret skill surged through him. The vermilion bird resurrection technique activated. Life force seemed to awaken inside Chu Feng's weakened frame. His pale complexion rapidly regained color, his exhausted appearance vanished, and within moments, he looked completely different from the man who had only recently awakened. The astonishment of the surrounding experts was understandable. Rapid recovery was already valuable in the martial world, but a secret skill capable of restoring Chu Feng's condition with such frightening speed held enormous strategic value. In battles where a single breath could decide life or death, recovery itself could become a weapon. The snow-haired immortal's eyes widened.
Chu Feng, what technique is that? Such recovery is extraordinary.
The others were equally amazed, yet surprise soon gave way to relief. More important than the mystery of the technique was the fact that Chu Feng had recovered. Then, without warning, hurried footsteps broke through the atmosphere of celebration. An elder of the Cyanwood Sacred Assembly rushed into the palace, his face filled with panic.
Lord Assembly Master, disaster.
Bailey Xuankong's delighted expression immediately hardened. At such a moment, that frantic interruption was naturally unwelcome.
Why are you shouting in such panic? What happened? The Heavenly Law Palace's army has entered the Cyanwood domain. They are advancing toward Cyanwood Mountain.
A chill swept through the hall, but it was not born from fear. Lord Xianghua's sword-like brows drew together. Cold power seeped outward from his body, filling the surrounding space with the pressure of a rank 8 martial emperor.
HMP8. So they finally came. Their courage is certainly not small.
The weaponry refinement immortal, the immeasurable immortal, the snow-haired immortal, Nangong Longjian, and the other major experts reacted almost identically. There was no shock in their expression, only readiness. That reaction immediately told Chu Feng something was wrong. An unexpected invasion should have created surprise. Instead, these experts looked like warriors who had been waiting beside a drawn sword. Clearly, events had unfolded while he was secluded. Chu Feng remembered perfectly well that he had killed Quang Kui outside the Moonlight Maze in a moment of fury. He had always known the Heavenly Law Palace would not simply swallow such humiliation. What puzzled him was the preparedness of everyone around him.
The Heavenly Law Palace's army did something happen while I was in closed-door training.
Lord Xianxia looked toward him, without the slightest intention of retreat.
Chu Feng, the Heavenly Law Palace has gone too far. Since they dared to come, we should teach them a lesson. Otherwise, they may truly begin believing that the entire holy land of martialism exists beneath their authority.
Only then did Chu Feng learn what had happened during his seclusion. The news that Chu Feng had killed Quang Kui had spread throughout the holy land of martialism with astonishing speed. For a power such as the Heavenly Law Palace, reputation was not an ornament. It was part of the foundation upon which its authority rested. The Heavenly Law Palace therefore issued a declaration to the entire world. Chu Feng was given 1 month to appear personally at the Heavenly Law Palace and account for what he had done. If he refused to appear, their army would march upon Cyanwood Mountain and destroy it. The threat was more than retaliation against one cultivator. By tying Chu Feng's action to the survival of Cyanwood Mountain, the Heavenly Law Palace was attempting to force him into submission through collective pressure. Either Chu Feng surrendered himself, or everyone around him would supposedly suffer the consequences. When that declaration reached the outside world, the holy land of martialism erupted with discussion. Countless factions watched Cyanwood Mountain, expecting either panic, negotiation, or submission. Yet Cyanwood Mountain did none of those things. It remained calm. There was no frantic response, no public plea, and no attempt to satisfy the Heavenly Law Palace's demand. The reason was simple. This was no longer the Cyanwood Mountain of the past. Powerful experts had gathered beneath its banner. Lord Xianxia, a rank 8 martial emperor, personally guarded the mountain. Though Cyanwood Mountain was still counted among the 9 powers, its actual strength had already risen beyond the 4 great imperial clans. Behind it also stood the ancient era's elves. With that foundation, fear would have been almost more surprising than resistance. Cyanwood Mountain had crossed a threshold. It was no longer merely a faction seeking protection from stronger forces. It now possessed enough strength and enough allies to make a major power calculate the price of provoking it. Indeed, many within Cyanwood Mountain did not merely accept the possibility of battle. They almost welcomed it. They wanted the Heavenly Law Palace to come, because only then could the entire holy land of martialism witness how much Cyanwood Mountain had changed. And this confrontation carried meaning beyond sect prestige. At its heart was Chu Feng. They were not simply defending a mountain. They were defending Chu Feng's dignity against a power that believed it could summon him for judgment. Chu Feng looked toward Lord Xianxia.
Lord Xianxia, you intend to confront the Heavenly Law Palace directly.
A faint smile appeared on Lord Xianxia's face.
What other choice is there where do not fear them? Since that is the case, naturally we will meet them in battle.
Chu Feng smiled.
I understand.
Those few words were enough. Chu Feng had never been a man who enjoyed allowing others to carry his burdens. But Lord Xianxia's answer made one fact perfectly clear. Cyanwood Mountain was choosing this battle willingly. Chu Feng would not be dragging them into war. They had already chosen to stand beside him. The next instant, Chu Feng moved. His body transformed into a streak of light and tore out of the palace hall. He shot upward through the sky, heading straight toward the main entrance of Cyanwood Mountain. One powerful aura after another erupted behind him. The assembled experts followed, blazing across the heavens like meteors flying in reverse. When Chu Feng arrived near Cyanwood Mountain's main entrance, several figures immediately flew toward him.
Little friend Chu Feng.
Every one of those figures possessed martial emperor cultivation. They were experts Chu Feng had once rescued inside the Moonlight Maze. They had kept their promises and accepted positions as nominal elders of Cyanwood Mountain. Now, with an army approaching, the experts gathered at Cyanwood Mountain had assembled together to meet the threat. Among the crowd, however, one familiar old man immediately caught Chu Feng's attention.
Senior Snowblade, you came as well.
The old man was the Snowblade Mad Demon. Unlike the martial emperors, who had formerly become nominal elders, he had never joined Cyanwood Mountain. His presence could mean only one thing. After learning of the Heavenly Law Palace's march, he had come here specifically for Chu Feng. The Snowblade Mad Demon slapped his chest, his expression containing not a trace of hesitation.
I told you before, your affairs are my affairs. If the Heavenly Law Palace declares war on you, then they have declared war on me as well. I will not stand aside.
There was no fear in the old man's voice. If anything, battle excitement burned within him. The coming enemy was one of the greatest powers in the holy land of martialism. Yet the Snowblade Mad Demon looked as though he had been waiting for precisely such an opponent. This was one of the clearest signs of how far Chu Feng's influence had spread. Strength could force obedience, but it could not easily produce this kind of loyalty. Several of the people standing here were not bound to Chu Feng by sect law. They had come because of debts, promises, respect, and personal conviction. Chu Feng swept his gaze across the gathered experts. His voice then rolled outward, clear and fearless.
Very well. Today, I will stand together with everyone here and face that so-called righteous and upright sect.
Laughter erupted from the experts around him. Everyone understood the mockery hidden in Chu Feng's description. The Heavenly Law Palace had long carried the image of a righteous orthodox power, yet today it had brought an army against Cyanwood Mountain over the death of Quang Q. Chu Feng moved to the very front of the assembled forces. Only then did he have time to examine the world beyond Cyanwood Mountain carefully. The sight before him was astonishing. Far beyond the mountain, the sky was crowded with silhouettes. Figures occupied the ground below, the heavens above, and even concealed regions of the surrounding void. The number of spectators was enormous. They were neither disciples of Cyanwood Mountain, nor inhabitants who had simply wandered over from the Cyanwood domain. Cultivators had traveled here from across the holy land of martialism. The reason was obvious. Word of the Heavenly Law Palace's planned attack had spread far and wide, and countless people had come to witness what promised to be a confrontation between major powers. But when Chu Feng saw those spectators, he felt no irritation. He wanted them here. A private victory could settle a personal grudge, but a public victory could reshape reputation throughout the entire holy land of martialism. Chu Feng understood that distinction perfectly. Every spectator standing beyond Cyanwood Mountain was another witness who could carry the outcome of this confrontation across the world. There had been a time when Chu Feng was merely a young cultivator who could be pursued, suppressed, and forced to survive beneath the pressure of powerful factions. That time was over. He wanted every cultivator present to understand one truth. The Chu Feng standing before them now was no longer someone who could be bullied without consequence. Not even the Heavenly Law Palace, an ancient colossus whose inheritance stretched across tens of thousands of years, would be permitted to trample upon him simply because it wished to. And that is what makes this moment more dangerous than an ordinary battle. Chu Feng is no longer fighting only to survive. He is fighting to establish where he stands in the hierarchy of the holy land of martialism. If Cyanwood Mountain can face the Heavenly Law Palace without bowing, then every great power watching from the shadows will be forced to reassess both Chu Feng and the force gathering around him. The heavens were crowded with witnesses. Cyanwood Mountain's experts stood ready. The Heavenly Law Palace's army was already advancing through the Cyanwood domain. Chu Feng stood at the front. Today, before the eyes of the holy land of martialism, he intended to settle the debt between himself and the Heavenly Law Palace.